not seen until you let go of what is seen. I'm talking about your money.
She always scares Dalton, so I got to give him a heads up.
Yeah, I jump easy.
All right. Hi, Dalton.
Hi, Austin. How has your week been?
Man, it's been good. It's been good. Been working a bunch. I mentioned to you, I think a little bit over text, but tomorrow, as we record this, so it'll already be out, I'm actually going to officially become a professional voiceover artist, something that I never thought I would ever get done. I'm
something I thought you would do from the first day I met you.
I appreciate all the confidence you have in me that I lack in myself. I really do. But yeah, I'm recording a radio spot for, I don't know if I can say it, but
you won't hear it. It's fine.
Yeah, they probably won't.
Someone
will clip it. But yeah, so get to do that tomorrow, which would be cool. I guess I did a rough track for testing. I work in advertising, so they were like, "Oh, that guy, he can do something." And I guess it tested well. People liked my voice, and so now I get to go record the final. We'll see.
Nice. Well, congrats.
Thank you.
You're achieving all your dreams that you never knew you had. So we have a guest for this episode, right, Austin?
Yes, we do.
We have from Echoplex Media, Gay Dave. What's up, man?
Oh, not much, man. How are you guys?
Living life, man. I got off an hour early from work so I could be on time, and I was still almost late. So that's how my day's going.
Were you like a minute late? Because I mean, I was like, I think like 30 seconds late, and you like popped up right after I got like on the call. So,
well, I got home at 7:15, and I had a really hard day at work. So I was like, man, I'm gonna take me a nice bath. Like, I'm not a bath guy, so like I was like, you know what? I'm gonna reward myself. It's a treat. So I went in there. I was chilling. And I looked at my phone and it said 8:15. I was like, oh, fuck. Ran out, got dressed, and came in here.
You know, that used to be the case for me, too. But now, like, to set up, I have like a script. So, like, come sit down at the computer and I double click one thing and I walk away and I come back and everything's like completely fired up and ready to go.
Yeah, your setup is insane. I saw it, too. I was like, oh, my. And you run it all on Linux, too, right?
Yeah. We at the beginning of the project back in 2015, it was like an ideological choice, but then as time went on and the tools got better, it turned out it was the right call. And I'm a Linux systems administrator, like by day, or at least part of my day job. So if things break, I can fix them.
Yeah, that's nice. That is nice. I'm an ex Apple employee, so I'm still drinking that Kool-Aid, even though it's way more expensive than it needs to be.
1 second, guys. I'm sorry. I'm going to get the cats out of here.
Oh, but oh man, I'm gonna miss the kitties.
I know.
So, have you heard any of this stuff?
And there you are, an OT.
Oh yeah, the LRH stuff. I haven't heard it.
Some people are more bottom than others. Of course, that's just about as insulting as you can possibly get.
For a homophobic dickhead, you know, it's awfully close.
He's awful. He's like he was aware of some things. I don't know what he was. He's probably talking about the tone scale or whatever it's called right there. You know.
Yeah, he's that man. I'm glad we're not talking about him a lot. I mean, he's obviously going to play a part in this whole story.
No, I'm like really glad that y'all chose David Miscavige instead of L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, it's L. Ron.
Oh, okay.
Just because L. Ron's been covered everywhere, you know. Robert Evans did an episode on him or like a multi-part, and I mean, like he's pretty covered. I don't feel like there's many people talk about little David.
That's true.
I think I don't know if you knew the other guy, and if he would have stuck around, he would have been real good for this. I don't know if you ever ran into if you were a character named Tommy Davis in your days on the internet.
Yeah. He was with Miscavige. He was like the spokesperson.
Yeah, he did this
right here, right now. I'm angry, real angry.
Yeah, he was all over that John Sweeney guy when he did that documentary.
Oh,
that was so wild.
Well, cool. Well, actually, let's jump into it then. We are talking about David Miscavige, the boo hiss, the head of the church used lightly of Scientology. So we're gonna get into this boy.
A little fun fact: I spent a year of my life in Clearwater, Florida. So this one is a project that hits close to home.
You know, real quick, what when we notice some of the people that we cover, particularly no, just a lot of them. Some of these people live in like the most beautiful places.
Dude, Clearwater's awesome.
Clearwater's a beautiful place. We cover this chemtrails lady that lives in Virginia Beach and cannot like appreciate the beauty of her surroundings in any meaningful way. This other lady lives in a place called Swampscott, what is it, Massachusetts, and every time she does like her little videos, we're like, oh my God, there's like that seafood restaurant is probably great. What are you doing? And so it's like, not for nothing. It seems like for whatever reason, beautiful places bring out the crazy in people for some reason. And I don't quite get it.
Florida specifically, we've found, has a special type of crazy and
a special place in my heart.
I know Dalton's a big Florida guy. So whenever inevitably any of these guys end up in Florida, I'm like, here we go again. This is what's going to happen.
It's like the Wild West with cocaine.
And laws so that they can't seize your house if you get busted doing shady shit. So of course everybody buys these huge homes there. All right, let me just play this real quick.
Hello and welcome. You've probably heard of Scientology. In fact, every 6 seconds, someone searches the question, what is Scientology? There's a lot of talk about us, and we get it.
There he is.
That is a lie.
I just love one thing I do love watching. I mean, there's quite a bit of stuff on him. He's got that like Philly tough accent. You know, it's not quite New York, but it's like, yeah, you want to talk about it? Like, go talk. We'll go around the corner. We'll have a little conversation.
Talk about Scientology.
This is Scientology, and it's not. I can nail New York. I can't quite get Philly.
He's always got a lot of reverb on his voice too, if you ever noticed.
Yeah, they drop the bass.
He likes rooms with hard surfaces.
Lots of marble and big light fixtures and just really over the top shit. All of it looks like terrible hotels. But yeah, so David Miscavige story opens with an asthma attack. He, as a kid, suffered from them his entire life. And these were like really nasty asthma attacks. I mean, like to the point where young David would turn blue in the face, according to his dad. And they tried everything. They couldn't figure out how to help. They tried medicine. They went to a bunch of doctors. They'd sit in a room with like hot water running in the tub, like thinking that the steam will help it. Nothing helped. Nothing at all. Until one day, his dad, Ron, decided, maybe Scientology will cure my son. Like I'm not kidding.
The grifter guy grifted. It's always at these really desperate points. That's when
I think they should have tried an all beef diet. I think that would have.
Like you, Jordan.
Listen,
Peterson.
David, have you tried keto?
So they, Ron, David's dad was doing. He had just started kind of dabbling in Scientology, and he was like, well, we've tried everything else. Maybe this is all in his head. And if we do an audit with my young son, then we will figure out what's going on and fix it. So the next time David started having an asthma attack, Ron threw him in the car. They went down to the Scientology Center, and he participated in a 45-minute auditing session, which apparently did the trick, and it cured David of his asthma. Like he never had another serious asthma attack, according to his dad, who even to this day, this is a guy who has left Scientology, left it in 2012. He still tells this story almost word for word. So like, even though he's not in the church, he still kind of believes in some of the stuff. Which
Ron Miscavige passed away in 2021.
Oh, did he? I didn't realize that.
Yeah. We are connected with the anti-Scientology community because we do an hour of Scientology content a week, and we can't do it without being connected with that community.
Right.
So yeah, it's something. Maybe it's why you had me on the show, because I will know things.
This is good. This is the kind of stuff, because I didn't.
Yeah. RIP to that guy. He wasn't, he did bad things just like everybody else who was in the cult and left. But he tried to make up for like the harm he had done after he got out. So good on him.
I also get the sense that and I think a lot of people do this. They enter Scientology with the best intentions, right? Like he's looking after his family. He wants to, do right by his kid. And his kid has got this health problem that he's hopeless. Like he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know where to turn. So,
well, desperate people do desperate things. So I'm not really faulting him at all for running to a church because nothing else is helping.
Well, if it was happening to your kid too, you'd be looking for everything under the sun.
Yeah, anything.
So that, like, once this happens, Ron, it really kind of like doubles down his belief in Scientology. And he takes off, packs up the whole family. They move to the UK and they start working in one of the Scientology centers, I think it's like the European headquarters that was in England.
So at this time was the center, it was the main center of the church in Florida, or was it in the UK at this point?
It's St. Hill at that point, I believe, was the main. St. Hill in the UK was the main.
In the UK.
Okay.
Or it might have been centered in Los Angeles at the time. It just depends when, like the exact year. But I think it was St. Hill at the time because L. Ron was in St. Hill.
Yep, I think you're right. I think that was why he went there, because that was the big headquarters.
Gotcha. Okay.
It changes a few times, and sometimes it's just the sea, which is the headquarters.
That's the best part of the L. Ron story. Unfortunately, I bet you couldn't get David Miscavige on that boat for more than a day or two. You don't want nothing to do with that.
Are we talking Secor?
Sea Org.
We will get Sea Org.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, they were really on a boat. They had several boats. They were out there, and they sounded miserable.
L. Ron talked about a prison planet, but he just ended up building a couple prison boats for people.
So David was 9 years old when they moved to the UK. He like immediately took to Scientology, and when he was 12, he became, and they keep these kind of records, the 4,867 Scientologists to go clear. Which is,
they keep records of all of that.
I guess every single, they were very specific about
very specific.
That was his number.
That is a very Scientology thing to know, by the way, like down to like, you're not like, oh, I was with the first 5,000 clears. No, it's a very Scientology thing to know that number exactly.
Now, what extent do you have to go through these courses or these audits to get clear?
Well, we'll touch on that, because I actually the diagram of all of like the different steps and processes, I've got it. It's just wild. It's very, very wild. But going clear is one of the earlier steps, but it does there's quite a bit that you have to do to get to that point. So it's basically you have no reactive mind, is what L. Ron Hubbard said, which is
it will take me forever to get clear. Jesus Christ.
So yeah, it's definitely like it's before they tell you about the space alien shit, but it's definitely after you've already been kind of hooked.
Yeah, you spent all this money and then like, oh well, I'm here now.
Yep. So by the time he was, that was when he was 12, sorry. And he starts to audit people at 12 years old. So this is like the child prodigy.
Could you imagine this little twerp sitting in the room with you?
Yep. So by the time he was 15, they'd moved back to the US. They were outside of Philly. And this is when I think the true David Miscavige comes out, and where he starts to complain that all the high schoolers that he goes to school with are doing too many drugs.
Oh, you little fucking, come on, you little snitch. What are you doing?
So he complains to his dad, and he says, he goes, I find it, what's the word? Oh, he finds it appalling. That's his quoted word.
Maybe David, if you would have did some drugs, maybe this would have turned way different.
I knew this was the point where I was like, Dalton's going to hate him from the very beginning. Like usually we have a pattern here, Dave, like where Dalton is like, I kind of like this guy. I like this guy. And then there's a point where it just turns and he's like, I don't like this guy anymore. Fuck this guy. But I was like, this one immediately, this is going to be the guy that Dalton bullied in school.
Oh, dude, I wasn't bullying nobody in school. You should have seen me. I looked like I was 12, so I was a senior in high school, man. It was rough.
So Ron was super supportive of his son and what he wanted to do. And so when David came to him and said, I want to drop out of high school and move to Clearwater, because that had at that time was now the new epicenter of Scientology, his dad was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, this is what you want to do. This is how you want to dedicate your life. Go for it. So on David's 16th birthday, he packed up and moved to Florida all on his own to join Scientology full time and work for them.
Being on your own at 16 is a wild concept to begin with, but leaving your home to go try to head this cult down in Florida.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's church, right? So you're living with and are surrounded by people that share your belief system, right? And that's your sense of community. And I mean, that's a big reason I think that anybody stays in a church or cult or at QAnon, like there's that need for some sort of community around you. And I think it's just a human thing. Some of these organizations are just way worse than others.
And I mean, not for nothing, like depending on what part of Philly they were in, There might have also been some reasons he wanted to leave for a place where the complexion was a little bit different. Yeah. And there ain't no two places where the complexion is different than Philadelphia and the inside of the Scientology Center in fucking Clearwater.
For sure. And I mean, given a lot of L. Ron Hubbard's beliefs, there's definitely a streak of that going through this. LRH had been on the run from various charges, criminal charges, in a bunch of different countries since the latter part of the 60s. That's the most succinct way I can put it. But he was at sea running basically from country to country, trying to find places that would take him in. When he eventually ran out of safe ports to harbor in and came back to the United States in 1975. And that's when he came to Clearwater. He was just like, I can't go. There's nowhere else I can go. I got to go back to the United States.
When you're on the run like that, like at what point, if he comes to the United States, he would face charges, right? If he got caught. Oh,
he goes into hiding immediately. Okay. Immediately comes to the United States, goes into hiding, and he kind of disappears from the story for the most part. Like he may come, LRH may come up again, but we're going to kind of shift over to David for the most part.
Gotcha.
So you know how when they're like, oh, we found the fugitives, I don't know, Ford Bronco or whatever. Well, they're like, we found this dude's big ass boat. We can't find him.
It seems like he just disappeared on the trace. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, and he's running too, man. He was in a bunch of cities. He was all over the place trying to stay ahead of the law. And he actually does, which is the really surprising thing. But he really remains free. Everybody else that he's talked to or he deals with goes down at a certain point, but not him.
Well, David just probably hid him in the same place he hid his wife. It's fine.
We'll get to that. See, this is going to be an episode that you know more about than any of the other ones. So you've kind of got a leg up on this, which is, I'm like, oh, he knows more than he usually does. So they're in Clearwater.
I'm just a sample boy from Georgia. I don't know a lot of stuff, but I know about Scientology.
I'm just trying to bring socialism to South Georgia.
Something like that.
So they're in Florida. David's down there now, and he joins the Sea Org almost immediately. 16 years old. That's a great age to indoctrinate anybody. So he's there. And he moved up the ranks really quickly. His father claims that within just 7 months after joining the Sea Org, that David was working directly for L. Ron Hubbard, which is impressive. And you see that's a big thing that he's very good at, is just sort of jumping over other people and getting power, amassing power very quickly.
I'm sensing like a lot of teacher's pet energy from David Miscavige.
Big teacher's pet energy, yeah.
Huge teacher's pet, yeah.
L. Ron, what would you need, Mr. L. Ron? I got you, Mr. L. Ron. I'll run and get this. Okay.
In fact, to this day, he sort of has, like, if you see David Miscavige interacting with Tom Cruise, you get a little bit of the teacher's pet energy because he really, really, really wants to be like Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a fucking suck up. That's exactly the slimy little suck up. So he, unbeknownst to David at this point, the church had been involved with a project they dubbed Operation Snow White. And Dave, you're probably gonna have a lot to throw in on this one. This shit was crazy. Basically, in 1973, LRH wants to infiltrate the United States government and purge all of these government departments of anything negative towards Scientology. So records and documents and all this like anything that shines a negative light on Scientology. He wants spies, essentially Scientology spies that work in government jobs, to start destroying these records. And this is like
completely normal stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Not deranged at all.
It's like an episode of Burn Notice. That's all.
Just like early 2000s USA drama Burn Notice.
That's exactly. It was madcap. There was, it was fun. It was fun. The police just kind of ignored it all.
And here's the wacky cult leader and his team of sleuths going into these. But I mean, the scope of this thing was massive. They managed to infiltrate 136 government agencies, and were there. It's really hard to get an exact number on this, but the number that's thrown around is that they had something like 5,000 people working in this operation to collect all these documents.
That's impressive.
It is I don't know if it's to this date, but at the time it was the largest domestic espionage in the history of the United States.
That's incredible.
How could you surpass that? I mean, with the internet and stuff, you couldn't ever surpass that because they'd catch you.
No, it's
they'd
true.
catch you. So
it'd be
very tough to surpass.
Would it be like, I mean, is Snowden, I mean, obviously I wouldn't call him domestic espionage, but I think people in the government would.
Yeah, somebody else might.
But
there was only one of him.
That's true. That is true. It wasn't a network. I was thinking, yeah, that's impressive.
So did they go in there like, hello, fellow government workers, ignore the 1,000-yard stare. I am here to do government work.
What it actually seemed like was that a lot of people already worked in government, and that, I mean, this is Scientology when it had like this like cool new religious movement vibe going on, and they were like, this is self-help, and so people signed up for it. And I think there were just a lot of people that were in the church that already worked in government.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually don't know that much about this Operation Snow White. I'm definitely more up to speed on like modern Scientology. Right. I know about this, but there's not like a lot of good, man. There should be they should do like a high quality documentary on this, because it would be serious subject matter, and there's a lot to chew on there.
This is like Scientology's Watergate.
See, I think it was like what Dave said. They walked in there with a 1,000-yard stare, but there's already several Men in Black, not the 1990s comedy with Will Smith, but like the other Men in Black, the alien Men in Black, they're dressed up like humans. So they have this weird, like almost not human-like quality, and they're already in the government. So they walk in, they're like, okay, this is completely normal. Just let them in.
Just let them in. Wave them in. And just look at these nice folks that are not telling us what their belief system is, because
we don't know that the Men in Black weren't with Scientology, right?
That's also true.
We don't know for sure.
I think we just figured out the Men in Black.
Scientology propaganda that we just like consumed.
That's it.
Xenu created the mind wipe tools that you see in there.
That's what you get when you give them like 300 grand or 400 grand. They give you one of those.
That's it, man.
Exactly. It didn't take long, right? They started this thing up in 1973. 1976, the FBI kind of caught wise to it. It was a really convoluted story. I ended up leaving it out on how they actually caught wise to it. It was like they caught two of these guys that were in a government building, and they asked them for ID. And one of the guys gave them the real ID. The other guy gave them a fake ID. And they were like, something's wrong. We got to start looking into this. But a year later, the FBI ended up raiding the church's headquarters. So the gig was up. They were like, this is not okay. We figured this out. So LRH is concerned above everything else about LRH, and he seemed to always have a contingency plan. And so what he had done is he forms this new organization, because this is what he does. He just forms these like organizations within Scientology. It's very like managerial, but not really, because it's just like, I need to save my ass. Let me get a bunch of people together to figure out how to do that. So he puts this organization called the Commodore's Messenger Organization. And it was taken out of like some of the elite members of the Sea Org. And they were basically his assistants. They worked for him directly, and they relayed messages back and forth, right? So he knew shit hit the fan. He was like, I'm nowhere near Clearwater, but I need someone who's going to, record, like take my memos back to the church so everybody knows that I'm still in touch, even if I'm not there.
That's barely better than having a can with a string.
Right. Well, guess who he named as the head of that little organization?
Who would that be?
David Miscavige. So at this point, Miscavige is like his right-hand man. He's doing everything. Like he's the voice of LRH. So,
yes, Papa.
Yeah, he's like, LRH said this, and everybody just has to go, okay, sure, absolutely. Thanks, David. Which is, I mean, that's a lot of power. And this guy's young.
That's a lot of power.
Yeah, he's not even 20 at this point, and he's like the right-hand man for the entire church. So in 1978, 11 high-ranking members of the church, including Mary Sue Hubbard, wife of L. Ron Hubbard, were indicted. And she was sentenced to 5 years in prison in 1979. So they got busted. And LRH is like, take my wife. I'll see you later. Didn't get caught. Wasn't anywhere near
He just shoved her out the door and ran out the back.
Kind of what it feels like. And she was essentially like the number 2 person in Scientology at that point. And now she's in jail. She's going to jail. So LRH is, obviously concerned still because, he thinks that the heat is still on him, and he's right. So he takes off again, goes into deep cover, and there are only 2 human beings that see him alive for the rest of his life. And it's this married couple named Pat Brocker and his wife, Annie. I mean, he doesn't see his wife for the rest of his life. He doesn't see his children for the rest of his life. He doesn't see anybody but these 2 people. Like, they are his entire social circle. And
those 2 people are the only accounts of this, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So do you think they're telling the truth?
Yeah, I think so. Because they eventually left the church. And so they spoke out against the church at the
Gotcha.
end.
Okay.
Well, they're probably telling the truth as they remember it, because not for nothing.
Right.
Like, think about being in that situation where you're in a cult and you're the only line of communication for the fugitive leader. It's going to scramble your brain in some kind of way. So you're not going to have like perfect recollection. You don't have perfect recollection of things anyway. But yeah, it's gonna be the truth as they know it. They don't seem like liars. Yeah. And
Miscavige knew that they were a liability, right? And I mean, once they left the church, and I don't remember the exact year that they left it, he's got private detectives following them for almost the next 20 years. Like, they follow him.
I'm stunned.
Yeah, right. Shocking. And they follow him. Like, he moves to, I think, Montana, and then he goes to I think he's in Prague for a while, and they follow him and just monitor every move because they
constantly looking out the blinds.
Yeah, these 2 are a big liability. We got to make sure that they're not up to anything and they're not talking to the wrong people. But I mean, David, again, like, if he has a superpower, it's like his thirst and pursuit of power, right? Like, that's what he does. It's like he's built for that kind of thing. And so I actually think it's like the timing lines up where I think, had he not gone into Scientology, had he been one of these like Wall Street greed is good douchebags, he would have done very, very well.
Just that hungry for power and
absolutely
this really driven capitalistic attitude towards life.
In the Reagan 80s, man, he would have made a fucking killing. He would have made a killing had he not joined a cult and taken over. I mean, really, the more I read about him,
I'm sure he still made a killing.
Well, and that's going to become a lot more true than you think. So David used LRH vanishing and now Mary Sue going to prison to like strike. He's like, this is the time. This is the perfect opportunity. Leadership is in crisis. Let's do it. LRH had actually had David set up an all clear unit. Again, another unit. And basically this unit was just to make it so that L. Ron Hubbard could eventually come out of hiding. So he's like, all right, I'm on the lam. I need you to do whatever you need to do, David, to make sure that I can emerge again and be the leader of Scientology and not get in a ton of trouble. So David Miscavige is like, yes, sir, I absolutely do whatever it takes. And so he basically convinces Mary Sue Hubbard to give up control of Scientology. He's like, this is the best thing. This is what your husband wants. She hasn't talked to her husband. She doesn't know what he actually wants, right. But I think that you should give up control of the organization. And I think the Sea Org, which he led at the time, should now be in charge of everybody, right? So begrudgingly, she would eventually give up control. She wrote LRH a letter. He never responded. I don't know if he actually got it. It was very possible that Miscavige was like, no, you're not going to get this.
Throw this away.
He's like, give me the letter. I'll make sure she gets it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll make sure he gets it. I mean,
Scout's honor, Scientologist honor. I'm make sure it gets there. So she writes to LRH. He never writes back. She's just like, fine, I guess this is what he wanted. You know, he's not, giving me any sort of clemency for what I've done. So he takes over. I mean, that's really when it happened. He is now the number 2 guy below LRH. I mean, he's running all the daily operations.
And with Elron gone in hiding, he's basically the guy.
Right, because he can make up whatever he wants about Elron because people think that he's the connection. And so he can say, Elrond said to do this. And everybody's like, okay, yeah, Elrond said to do that.
All right,
Do
yes,
it.
sir.
Let's do it. This is none of this would work in the internet age. None of it would work, right? This is all of this depends on not having internet connection.
Yeah, them dang woke millennials ruin cults. God damn it.
So yeah, they in 82, I'm just going to jump a little forward. David marries fellow Sea Org member Shelley Barnett. You alluded to her earlier. She's going to play a big role in some of this. She was also a member of the CMO. And when I was doing research, and I never heard this before, Dave, maybe you had, I didn't know the story about Shelley's mom. And so Shelley's mom was also part of the church, and she died in 1985. She was 52 years old. She was found dead, and she had been shot 3 times in the chest and once in the side of the head by a rifle. That's a big, long gun.
Yeah, I'd never heard about this, but not surprised that you the place you found the information about this was the Village Voice.
With Tony Ortega.
They did a lot. Yeah, they did a lot of good work on the cult of Scientology.
They really did, man. Their run as a paper was just fantastic when they were on fire. So the weirdness kind of started there. So this is, like Dave just said, from the Village Voice. So after performing an autopsy, however, medical examiner Joan Shipley decided that Barnett's death was a suicide. And this is in quotes. The case is that of a 52-year-old woman who died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds, which were self-inflicted, reads Shipley's report, which came out more than a month after the incident.
So where was she shot again?
3 times in the chest and 1 in the side of the head.
How the fuck? No. No.
52-year-old woman.
I'm just thinking, how do you shoot yourself? How do you shoot yourself 4 times? Like,
right.
Like after you shoot once, ow, that hurt.
You gotta keep going. You gotta make sure it counts. I mean, the fact that they labeled it as suicide is just one of the bigger kind of audacious things. Now there's a lot of nuance to the story, right? There's a lot of other stuff. Like you could simply say, hey, it was 4 times and suicide, but looked suspicious. But she had been having depression. She had recently had a surgery, and afterwards she kind of, like, I think it crossed her wires a little bit, and she just kind of wasn't the same. She had attempted to slice her wrists the days before, and her daughter Camille claimed that she had caught her mother writing suicide notes and then, like, quickly hiding them away when she entered the room. But okay, that's one story, and that may lead a coroner, like if they, if the police interview her and the coroner finds out about it, that could lead to that conclusion. But there's another angle involving David, and this is again from the Village Voice. It said, over the years, David Miscavige's detractors have raised the strange details of his mother-in-law's death to suggest that he or the church may have had some reason to want her dead. In a 1994 affidavit in a court case growing out of the massive legal morass following Time magazine's 1991 cover story, we'll talk about that. Former high-ranking church executive Vicky Asnarin testified that Barnett had become part of an embarrassing splinter group that had rejected Miscavige's leadership of Scientology. So she's like, I don't believe you. I don't think this is what actually was happening.
David said she gotta go. Yep. She's got to go.
So it said Flo Barnett's membership in this group made her a suppressive person, as she was actively squirreling, which is a term that they use for people that are trying to convince other people to leave and get out of the room.
What a funny word to use.
More specifically for people who are, let's say, practicing Scientology without a license. So if you're a squirrel would be like if I was doing independent Scientology. That's
they don't like that.
What the term means. They send squirrel busters to your place of business if you're doing Scientology with. I'm not even kidding. Look up Squirrel Busters on YouTube sometime. The videos are wild.
Wow. Okay.
They have like t-shirt. I've seen some with t-shirts.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They have t-shirts. They have like the spelunking hats with a GoPro on them. I'm not. It's crazy.
It's so weird. So basically, she was. They called her a squirrel. They said she had to go. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing because, I mean, she's the mother of David Miscavige's wife. Like her daughter is married to the guy who's second in command. So that's kind of the conspiracy theory. I don't know where I fall on this, but I'd never heard it before. So I was like, hey, this is kind of weird.
Right. So do you think David's wife was in the know on this? Do you think he told her what was up, what was going on? Not that he didn't allegedly kill his mother-in-law. Allegedly.
The first thought that I kind of thought was that maybe her mother was convincing her that David is a bad dude, or not legitimate. And I think that made him a little nervous. Like I said, I don't have any way I don't know what actually happened, but that feels like, after reading enough about this guy, that feels like something that would really threaten his position. Yeah. Big time. Well, so then it happens. LRH dies in 1986.
Rest in piss.
Yep, pretty much. Fucking weirdo. It's a very strange announcement of his death that I want to play real quick. And this is David announcing to a giant congregation of Scientologists that the founder, the prophet, the Commodore was dead.
He has now moved on to his next level of OT research. This level is beyond anything any one of us ever imagined. This level is in fact done in an exterior state, meaning that it is done completely exterior from the body. At this level of OT, the body is nothing more than an impediment and encumbrance to any further gain as an OT. Thus, at 2000 hours Friday, the 24th of January, AD 36, L. Ron Hubbard discarded the body he had used in this lifetime for 74 years, 10 months, and 11 days. The body he had used to facilitate his existence in this messed universe had ceased to be useful, and in fact had become an impediment to the work he now must do outside of its confines.
That is so creepy. Totally normal, totally regular behavior.
Fucking weird. It's so weird, but it tracks with like them tracking everything, recording everything, knowing exactly how many days and minutes and years, and like all of that is so like them.
Very Scientologist.
There's video of that whole event, and we watched the whole event on stream. The whole event was just very odd.
It is. It
is very,
so,
very odd.
It's so weird. It's so weird. So shortly before he died, the story goes is he actually issued an order that circulated through the Sea Org, and it was announced that Pat and Annie Brocker were actually supposed to be promoted to the new rank of loyal officer, and this would make them the highest ranking officers, and thus the successors to LRH himself. And this makes a lot of sense because these are the only two people that LRH has spent any time around in person for years now, right? So he trusts them more than anybody else. I think it's telling that he trusts them because he chose those two people to disappear with. And so he sends out this memo, starts to circulate. David asserts that this order had been forged and manages to convince enough people
that
of that.
Little squirrely fuck, not to go back through the squirrels, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So he convinces enough people and they go, yeah, you know what? You're right. It's probably a forgery. David is the new leader of Scientology.
That easy, huh?
That's easy. He is 26 years old when he takes over Scientology.
Jesus Christ, dude. 26. That's crazy.
Yeah. You know, we talked about this a little bit in the James Strang episode. Like, these cults don't have very good succession planning. And even when there is something in place, all it takes is like one shady guy to fuck up everything, right? Like it was in Mormon, in the Mormon church, there was no secession plan, and there were like
I was
seven
about to
guys.
say this sounds very Mormon.
Well, this just sounds like that point where Joseph Smith dies, and then there's like a mad race to figure out who's in charge. But
I'm the leader. No, I'm the leader.
Right. I have a cannon and a pirate ship, and we'll blow you up. Go see the James Strang episode. It's actually one of my favorite ones we've done.
Yeah.
So he has consolidated his power. And this is kind of what, as I was reading this, I was like, Scientology is actually a lot like Apple computer.
Makes a lot of sense in both cults,
No, okay, that was not my angle. So,
hey, listen, I'll see. Let's check that energy on Christmas whenever I become part of the Green Bubble Gang. Okay,
you've been threatening it for a while, but Apple. So his company was built by the founder, right? By the guy who everybody believed in, Steve Jobs. right? He's the guy. He's the ideas guy. He's the the guru. He's like the visionary for this brand. And then when he dies, a guy named Tim Cook takes over, right? And Tim Cook is not a visionary. I don't care who you are. He's a manager, right? He's a guy that goes in and restructures things and finds inconsistency, finds ways to improve business. He refines the business. Like, he's not out there dreaming up new products that are just going to revolutionize the way that everybody lives in the same way that Steve Jobs is. And that's kind of how I feel about LRH and Miscavige. Like, LRH was a visionary. This was his dream to put this thing together. Miscavige comes in there and he's like, you know what? We're going to kind of tweak things around and shift people around and do org charts and get really organized and more resemble like a business than one guy's personal fantasy of a cult.
So you guys have recruited a lot of cult members this quarter. We're going to reward you with a pizza party.
Exactly. He's like, management is not happy. You
think anybody in that church ever got a pizza party? Yeah, after Miscavige came in.
No. You want to talk about a little dictator? This was the guy. But he definitely is like of that managerial class, like where he's just like,
he's PMC.
Yeah, exactly.
It's PMC,
professional managerial class. That is 100% David Miscavige. And this is what happens when you reward a PMC with a cult. This is exactly how things go wrong. So it a little bit really quick, because we hit on this a little bit, but I want to just talk about how the church makes its money up to this point, right? Because we're a show about grifters making money. This is important. I think what sets them apart from other churches is that most churches offer their doctrine up front, right? You go to a church. Well, I would say doctrine, maybe not actual intentions.
Right, okay.
Like you can go into a Christian church and have access to the Bible, right? It's there. Right. You can read it. You can do all of that. That's not what these guys do, right? So like, imagine going to church and they start talking, let's go through the Old Testament, because I love the Old Testament. That's because I think it's
you love that hellfire brimstone God.
Yeah, man. The big floods. I love killing everybody. I don't love killing everybody, but I like stories.
Hey, man, you said it.
But it's imagine like, so the priest or preacher, whatever, is giving a sermon and they're telling you the story up to the Great Flood, right? And then they go, okay, so to learn any more past what happened, like here he is, Noah, he's got all the different animals on this big ark. And that's the end of the story. To learn more, give us $3,000 and we will reveal more of the story to you. That's not something any other place does, any other religion does, any other group does.
I don't know. Like, we kind of do that. You can find more bonus content at patreon.com/if you catch my grift.
Shit. But we're not a religion. Although
I pretend to do that. But if anybody knows how like Twitch works, that doesn't even work, because like they could just get the replay and just replay and they'd be like, I just didn't give you $5.
Also, you were giving me stuff that I already had access to. You were like, here, take this. Here's the extended version. I was like, I'm on your Patreon. I'm there.
Oh, you're on my Patreon?
I'm on your Patreon. I'm supporting you.
I don't pay any attention to the people over there, because there's only like 11 of them.
Well, yeah, because and I realized that after I did it, I was like, he's making his money on Twitch. That's where you are much more of a streamer than like a traditional podcast, and which is cool. But you are up way later than I am, because you're on the West Coast.
We're the last one standing usually on the night Twitch is the right Twitch,
Yeah, you're like, I'm not going to get started until about 9 Pacific, and I'm like, I'm going to be in bed. I'm done.
Some people have a regular life. I understand.
Well, so basically you pay to unlock knowledge, right? That's the easiest way for me to do it. And they've got all these crazy levels and all this organization. And I just want to bring up really quick, I want to show you this document that it's called the Bridge, which is short for the Bridge to Total Freedom. And this is like all the different levels. You're not going to be able to see everything, Dalton, but I just want to give you an idea of like how complicated this shit is. So you can see here, you've got these OT levels, the operating thetan levels. You've got this is a massive document. Here's where you go clear.
Jeez, you have to do so much to get clear.
Yeah. And you have to pay at every single level. For every single training, for every single class, you have to pay. So you can see how people pay all of this fucking money. And we'll put this on some of our
Sunshine
social.
Rundown. Wow.
It is crazy.
This is perfect for an audio medium.
We'll post this somewhere. We'll post it on Twitter. Or
Yeah,
put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Keep a lookout for the
What do they
Twitter.
say? What do they say on Real Podcasts? A link will be in the show notes.
Well, yeah, exactly. You're lucky if you get my notes in there. If I remember to put them when we post this podcast, we try. So that's their big scam, right? That you have to pay to progress in the organization, to get more prestige and learn more. And it actually works because it's billed as a self-help.
It's like Call of Duty, prestige. Once you get to prestige, blah, 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 blah. Once you get to prestige 70, you get the gold camo.
Exactly.
And that's going clear.
Yep. But I mean, you also, by the time they start talking about Xenu and aliens and all this shit,
Sunk cost fallacy time.
you think, yeah, that's it. I mean, you've put so much money into it that you're like,
because even if you're like, you got to be shitting me, you think to yourself, this is where all my friends are. This is where my job is. This is like, I've already given these people either you've given them a lot of money or you've donated an unreasonable amount of your time or both. And then they tell you this wild story about what happened, was it 13 trillion years ago? Like a time frame that no astrophysicist thinks is possible, maybe. But and they just tell you this wild story about like volcanoes and the souls of overpopulated aliens, and in their story, that God character kind of is like actually the bad guy,
right?
And it's you just
living in a
such
volcano.
Wild, like when they when people first saw the South Park thing, they're like, that can't be what Scientology believes. I'm like, yeah, that's literally the operating fate in level 3. They tell you this.
It's like if the Sith had the galaxy forever.
Yeah.
My question is, all of this now is readily available information. We know what the end game, like what their God is, how it happened, how it emerged, blah, blah, blah. What is the point right now in 2022 of somebody entering Scientology?
Well, we'll get to that.
But I can just tell you real quick, you have a point. They're finding it very hard to recruit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we'll kind of, I think we'll close on kind of the current state of Scientology, just because that makes maybe
real
the only
scam.
Maybe the only highlight of this entire story. So they've got the auditing, right, and progressing in the church. That's the thing. That's what L. Ron set up, right? But David comes in and he kind of adds a little bit more to it. He in the 80s, he adds a new revenue stream, and it's no longer were they just charging money for auditing, but they were straight up asking for donations. They were going, hey, we have all these enemies. They're all out to get us. This is what we believe in.
It's the Alex Jones concept.
It's absolutely the Alex
comes
Jones.
around. I have these enemies. We don't have the funds to last another year. I need you to donate.
It's 100% that. It's 100% that.
All of these supplements.
Yep, Alex at least sells something. These people are just straight up going, we need to fund our legal battles against our enemies. We need your money to pay for all of these things because people are after us.
They got stuff that'll whack your brain permanently.
You're goddamn right.
Yeah, so they've changed up their money making, but it didn't take long until their enemies launched an attack upon them. Big quote marks, big air quotes on that. In 1991, in 1991, Time magazine published a cover story titled "The Thriving Cult of Greed and Power," and it was an investigative piece. And this is 91. This is really early. Like this, no one was on to Scientology's beat that I could tell.
My mom has this from when it came out because she was always interested in cults and like high control groups and stuff.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
She's got. I think it might still be on like a table somewhere in her house.
That's really awesome. So this is an investigative piece into Scientology by this journalist named Richard Behar. Highly critical, by the way. Obviously, they absolutely saw Scientology for what it was early on. To give you an idea of the tone of this piece, I want to read you the first 2 paragraphs from the piece. This is like right out of the gate. This is what this is saying. By all appearances, Noah Loddick of Kingston, Pennsylvania, had been a normal, happy 24-year-old who was looking for his place in the world. On the day last June, when his parents drove to New York City to claim his body, they were nearly catatonic with grief. The young Russian studies scholar had jumped from a 10th floor window of the Milford Plaza Hotel and bounced off the hood of a stretch limousine.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. When the police arrived, his fingers were still clutching $171 in cash, virtually the only money he hadn't yet turned over to the Church of Scientology, the self-help, quote, philosophy group that he had discovered just 7 months earlier. His death inspired his father, Edward, a physician, to start his own investigation of the church. And this is in quotes. "We thought Scientology was something like Dale Carnegie," Loddick says. "I now believe it's a school for psychopaths. Their so-called therapies are manipulations. They take the best and brightest people and destroy them. The Loddicks want to sue the church for contributing to their son's death, but the prospect has them frightened. For nearly 40 years, the big business of Scientology has shielded itself exquisitely behind the First Amendment, as well as a battery of high-priced criminal lawyers and shady private detectives."
Accurate.
Every word of
awful.
that is 100%, and it's awful.
And it's the first two paragraphs. So, I mean, the intent of the author, is probably pretty good journalism, but also the intent of the author was clearly an advocacy piece.
Yeah.
For the victims and the people inside of the cult, and Scientology didn't like that at all.
Ooh, boy.
If there was people like maybe some of the younger listeners, I'm sorry, might not understand that in 1991, the internet was in its infancy. It was like a baby. Time magazine was big shit.
Yep.
You could not see Time magazine. There was no way Scientology was going to be able to shield its members from just seeing the cover of this and it being called the Cult of Greed. So they were pissed.
Yep.
So at this point, people didn't really recognize it as a religion. They thought it was like a self-help group.
It disguised itself. It said they were self-help. It said it was a church, right? They always considered themselves a church, but it was a church that you could join. It was started in, the 50s, get into the 60s. And it was like, oh, we're these self-help guys. It's very like hippy dippy kind of thing. And it wasn't that at all, but that's how they sold it.
It never really was. It was always like a high demand, high control group. It's just that because of the time that it came out of, people sort of lumped it in with like new age sort of like almost like with like Timothy Leary kind of stuff.
Yep.
But it was definitely more like the Moonies or like Heaven's Gate in the way that it controlled its members, and people just didn't know that.
But also, like in the 60s and 70s, there were so many fucking cults that started up and new religious movements.
Like, who has the time to keep track of it all without the internet?
Right.
Exactly.
I didn't know the Moonies had control of all that shit in New York until I went to New York to visit Austin. And he was like, you see that hotel right there? The Moonies own that.
Owned by the Moonies, the New Yorker Hotel on 34th Street. It's still to this day owned by them, and through like a bunch of different weird shell corporations. But yeah, so that gets published. Right. And immediately Scientology just whips up into a fury, obviously.
Ruh-roh.
So the church took out a full page ad in USA Today every single weekday for 12 weeks and started
normal behavior of somebody that's not guilty of anything.
Right? I'm not mad. Don't put in the newspaper that I was mad.
Well, they drag shit like, Time Magazine one year named Hitler Man of the Year, but it wasn't like in praise of Hitler. It was because the year that it was, I don't remember the exact year. It
was 38.
38. That's kind of what I thought.
It's in your own notes here. Let's not pretend I have like a good recall of history.
Dave, I would have rode that to the moon, baby. I would have not have let him.
You're right. This is what happens.
If any of my people listen to this, they're like, that was written down somewhere. Dave's bullshitting.
So I'm riffing on my notes. I'm trying not to rely as much on them as I do. Yeah. So 38, they named Hitler Man of the Year. And so Scientology points out that they're not Nazi sympathizers at Time Magazine, all this crazy shit to distract from what was going on. Then after they wrapped up, they paid to have a 48-page advertisement circulate with copies of USA Today. There was like 1.8 million of them that circulated. I'm
not mad. Don't put in the newspaper a 48-page thing saying that I'm mad.
Yep. And so one thing I learned, I did a stint working for a PR agency, and one of the weirder things that I learned is that a lot of the clients of the PR agency love USA Today. And I always wondered why that was, because I'm like, that's not, when I think reputable news sources, that's not one of the first ones that I come to. But it turns out that one of USA Today's big things is that they're distributed in all these hotels, and their circulation numbers are just massive. And so it's a really good tool to get to a lot of people that maybe don't always read the New York Times or the Washington Post or Wall Street Journal or anything like that. So it's a coveted newspaper because a lot of people get it all over the world, and it's in one of the bigger national newspapers. So they took out a bunch. They gave you 48
basically the reason marketing people is that you basically see USA Today without really your permission, because if it's just at the hotel.
Yep, they just leave it at your door.
That's great. That's fantastic.
That's it. That's the true thing that I learned in my brief stint and got out of that industry, because I was like, this is yucky. I don't like this at all. So the church took this seriously enough that David Miscavige agreed to give his first and only live television interview with Ted Koppel. And Dave, you have an entire episode dedicated to this interview.
Yeah, we sometimes on the Intellectual Dollar Tree, we get like covering like the cast of characters from the intellectual dark web. It just gets grueling, right? And sometimes me and HK, we find something that's a little bit off the beaten path, but that we can still kind of relate back in some ways. And so we watched the interview with Ted Koppel and David Miscavige for the Intellectual Dollar Tree. And we were able to actually spot like several times where some of the deflection tactics reminded us a lot of people like Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin. Like on the rare occasions that these people are asked challenging questions, they'll make the claims that, oh, people are just out to get me. They're out to impugn my reputation. And that's kind of what Dave Miscavige was doing whenever he was asked tough questions, or he would like try to monologue in his answers. Episode 28 of the Intellectual Dollar Tree, or if you don't want to listen to two idiots who were probably smoking too much weed talk about it, you can just find it on YouTube. Just Ted Koppel, David Miscavige into YouTube. It's really interesting. It's a real interesting look back. Also, the bad VHS rip that it came from is just kind of warms my heart a little bit.
This is now the second time that Ted Koppel's shown up on our show. We did an episode with a lighter one, and actually a good grifter episode about Tammy Faye. And the bakers, right after their big scandal blew up, were on Ted Koppel trying to diffuse the situation. So he's a surprise.
So my co-host said something about Jim Baker that was funny, because she was like, she spelled it out. And I was like, no, there's two Ks. She's like, what, did they take the third one out after the war? I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, Jim Baker can go fuck himself.
He certainly can. Him and his buckets of slop. Get the fuck out of here.
Jesus Christ.
For sure.
Yeah. Don't like
Those buckets of slop are a good grift, though, because by the time you need them, society has crumbled and there's nowhere to really return them if they're garbage.
And everybody fucking sells them.
So I have this idea, and Dave, you can tell me if this is good. I brought this to Austin. Now I want a second opinion. For Patreon, I want to get a Baker bucket or Alex Jones bucket, or they sell them at Walmart. Like they
already did this. They already did this on, like, Michael Brooks already did this on the Majority Report.
But
yeah, I don't think we have the same crossover audience as Michael Brooks, though.
I think what I want to do is take it, try it as intended first, right? And then give my review of it, and then try to make it into like an actual edible meal, like something that's good. Like, I think incorporate it with other things.
A funner thing to do would maybe be to try everything separately and then just mix everything into one giant fucking trough.
No, that is more my brand. I think
very much.
Not a bucket, not a bowl, a fucking trough. It has to be in a trough.
Okay.
You can light a couch on fire, like put a trough over the couch so you can warm everything up.
I like it. This is the kind of original thinking we need. We need this injection. All right, let's go back to this Time Magazine article. So of course, the church sues Time Magazine for $416 million.
$416 million. Were their feelings hurt that bad?
Yes. Yeah, they sued Time, they sued the journalist, and part of their suit was that this article was actually paid for by, I want to say, Abbott Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, they were it was they were beefing with Abbott at the time. I forget why. I think somebody from Abbott had been like interviewed and mentioned that Scientology was harmful, but they'd kind of mentioned it kind of offhandedly, like it wasn't the point of the interview. Right. And without any real evidence, Scientology claimed that Abbott Pharmaceutical had paid for the article to get published.
Right.
And if I understand correctly, that false claim is one of the main reasons the suit got dropped, because they were unable to demonstrate that there was any connection to Abbott. And so it just, as if you like defamation, libel, those are really tough hills to climb in the United States anyway. And so you're like, when you start filing, it better be airtight. And if people see that there are like fabrications in the filing, it's getting thrown out, just because the First Amendment is applied in a pretty broad way, especially when it comes to public figures, public facing organizations, and journalism.
At what
probably
point,
for the best.
At what point is the lawsuit actually for the money, though, or is it for convincing their victims that their enemies actually are out to get them?
Both.
Well, both. Absolutely both.
Yeah, it's a fundraising thing. I mean, in the same way that like Trump Stop the Steal stuff was a fundraising thing, you know, that it's absolutely that. Like this just, it's happening.
Or Owen Schroyer raising money for his defense fund.
Exactly.
Or like all of some of your favorite grifters, like refusing to delete a single tweet to get put back on Twitter and then running the grift while they're being censored.
I am being silenced.
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. But it also does slowly cost the people that they're suing money, right? Like it ended up costing Time $7.8 million in all the legal fees. So like, I mean,
it would have been great if Time would have turned around and sued Scientology
for the losses. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, I think the tie-in with Abbott, from what I understood, is that Scientology is notoriously anti-psychiatry, anti-mental illness, medication, any of that.
They don't believe mental illness exists, at least not the way that the scientific community believes it exists. They believe that it's like some version of like either a character flaw that you can work on yourself or demonic possession through engrams.
Just like my father.
Yeah, who will not listen to this, I'm sure, ever. Yeah, so they were like, you know, Abbott manufactures all these, you know, psychological medications that treat depression or, you know, bipolar disorder, all these other things. And so this was part of the big conspiracy, is that, we say these things don't exist. This company's entire business model is selling you a cure for something that we say doesn't exist. So naturally, they're going to put out a hit piece on us.
Right, but yeah, they said that they had like no evidence, not like
nothing,
thin evidence, none. They had no evidence that, because it doesn't look like Abbott had anything to do with it.
Yep.
Because you can be creeped out by Scientology and not actually have anything to do with the pharmaceutical industry, it turns out.
It's weird how that works. So like Dave said, the lawsuits were dismissed. They were just, this is bullshit. But again, cost Time magazine $7.8 million. But this wasn't the only crisis facing the church. So Scientology had been, like most churches, had been granted tax exempt status when it was founded in 1956. But 2 years later, it was revoked because they were like,
Uncle Sam came a knocking.
They knew. They were like, even early on, they were like, this is not right. Like something else is going on. But you know that well, so it was a technicality that LRH decided that I'm just going to fucking ignore. Like, I'm not paying taxes. I'm a church. I've said I'm a church. At one point I had tax exempt status, so I'm not paying taxes. And
he just like me.
Exactly. So eventually the IRS would catch up to them and say, hey, you owe us a lot of money in back taxes. And just, Dalton, just for fun, how much do you think that they owed the IRS?
2 years of back taxes? Right?
No, not 2 years. This is 1958.
Oh, wait. So they have to pay they have to pay the back taxes from when they were tax exempt? Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, not from when they were only tax exempt for a couple of years.
Yeah, 2 years.
But they were operating as if they were tax exempt for most of the time that they existed.
Almost 40 years.
Most is like the vast majority of the years that they existed, they were operating as if they were tax exempt.
Gotcha. $850 million.
That's not bad. It is $1 billion
with a B.
With a B. And then, I mean, they don't have that kind of money. So it is a fucking emergency. Like, this is, way beyond Alex Jones being sued by the Sandy Hook families. Like, this is a ridiculous amount of money that no church has access to. It doesn't have the cash. So they shift into the same thing that they always do when they, encounter a crisis. And they follow LRH's teachings. And his teaching was never treat a war like a skirmish. Treat all skirmishes like wars.
Boy, that's dangerous.
Yeah. And they actually declare, this is not even a thing, open war on the IRS. So now Scientology goes to war with the IRS.
It's just some guy in a suit with a pocket protector going, what the fuck did I do?
Yeah, like, what, really? You're actually closer than you might think. So they started filing lawsuits, not only against the IRS, but against individual people that worked for the IRS.
Jesus Christ.
They started hiring private detectives to go to IRS functions, like when they would have retreats, they would send spies into the hotel, and they would like write down they would keep track of like who's drinking what and who's had the most to drink, and maybe we can get some information out of them and then turn that into a lawsuit. It's like a whole fucking thing. It's
terrifying.
Again. Yeah. And I mean, hundreds of lawsuits were filed against individual people that worked at the IRS. And these are like normal 9 to 5. I mean, these are like the dorkiest of the dorky. If you're like, I want to go work for the IRS when I grow up. I mean, these
are like bureaucrats that are not trained in counterintelligence, right? So they have no idea they're being spied on because they're like the assistant manager of the such and such department at the IRS building in Topeka, Kansas or something.
Right, exactly. This is the guy who's like, you need to file this form in duplicate in order to
right, sorry, I guess. So you only filed it once, but don't worry, just file a second one and we got you covered. Thank you. Thank you for calling the IRS today.
See, you filed as a 1099, but I think you're more of a W-4.
So, but on top of that, they were also like documenting, like I said, offsites and like workshops and events. And they would be like, they drank all of this alcohol and that's on the taxpayer dollar, which is, it's kind of silly because it's a very small amount of money compared to what the United States government spends every year. Like, it's stupid.
I wish I would have declared war on the Pentagon budget.
Well, yeah, me too.
Well, I mean, I think this would have gone differently if Scientology would have declared war on the war machine.
That's true.
I mean, who you? I mean, if you want to like gain sympathy with Americans, go after the tax man.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. You'll get the patriots, mid quotes, that are against the tax man.
During this time, I think it was Jim Jones said that he stood with Scientology.
That is terrifying.
Just Leonard Skinner's Freebird playing in the background.
I think it was either this or was during the was it Mockingbird or was the other one Operation Snow White? Operation Mockingbird. Yeah, it was either this or Snow White, but I think it was during this that Jim Jones said he was like stood with this Church of Scientology.
So in short, basically, anybody who worked for the IRS was now their life was turned into hell. Their life was turned into hell. I mean, like they targeted these people. These people didn't deserve any of this attention, but they just wanted to make them suffer. And it didn't seem to move the needle very much. So Miscavige was like, I need to do something more. So one day he and a colleague were in Washington, D.C. on church business, and they decided to pay a visit to the IRS in person. Right, the IRS building. They went to the Internal Revenue Service. They didn't have an appointment, but walked in the building and asked to see Fred Goldberg, who was the commissioner of the IRS at the time. He's the big boss.
That's like leaving the club and you found out somebody was like checking out your girl or something. I'm gonna go fucking find this fucker at his house. And you pull up to his house and you knock on the door like, hey, bitch, come find me in the street.
Come out.
David Miscavige goes in there. He goes, you can either take a meeting with me or you can cash me outside. How about that?
Fuck, man, you're like in my brain, Dave. That was So the reception and asked, this is kind of like the only baller thing that David has ever done. He goes, the receptionist asked who they were and if they had an appointment. Miscavige said that if they told Fred that it was David Miscavige from the Church of Scientology that was there to see him, he would take the appointment. So he's like, he'll know who we are. If you tell him who it is, he'll come down. He'll take our meeting. He didn't. He didn't. Not that day. Eventually, he did end up meeting with David and his little assorted lawyers and weirdos from the church. And at the end of the meeting, Miscavige mentioned that if they gained, more or less, this is paraphrasing, but more or less, if they gained tax exempt status, all of the lawsuits would disappear.
Oh, dude, that is some blackmail cheesy ass shit.
Yep. And Fred Goldberg, who's the head of the IRS, turned to one of the lawyers from Scientology and said, is he serious? Will that happen? And the lawyer said, yeah, he's absolutely serious. If this goes through, everything, all the lawsuits disappear.
Fred Goldberg from the IRS should have got on the horn with the FBI and said, I believe I am being extorted by the Church of Scientology right now.
Yeah.
But
I believe you've raided them before. And it seems like, it seems like this, you might be interested in this.
There's a whole lot of bad shit going down in Clearwater, Florida.
FBI's like, well, we used to have a bunch of files on them and we seem to have misplaced them. I don't know what happened. They started working together, and Goldberg, told his team to start working with them and try to see if they could come to some sort of conclusion and get them this tax exempt status.
That is just like the fucking U.S. government. These fucking 3-letter agencies don't communicate at all. They have no clue what any other fucking agency is doing. If they would have just communicated with the fucking feds or some shit, none of this would have happened.
Yep.
David Miscavige goes to prison for fucking extortion, and then Scientology dies.
Because like literally, he just went in there and extorted the. That's pretty baller, honestly. Like you gotta either it's either called having a pair or delusions of grandeur.
Oh, it's definitely delusions of grandeur.
In this case, it's delusions. I think you can go in and extort the IRS, like the head of the IRS. It worked though.
It worked. So Scientology had to clean up a bunch of shit on their end. Like they had to get the books right, which it's not hard to think that
they had to
believe
cook the books.
That they were cooking the books. They also had a problematic teaching from LRH, where LRH has been quoted in I don't know if it's part of it now, but it was part of Scientology at that point, where he had said in quotes, "Make money, make more money, make others produce so as to make money." That was marching orders from LRH, and they were like, "This doesn't really line
Mr.
up."
Krabs, motherfucker.
This doesn't line up with a religion. This lines up with a pyramid scheme, or not a pyramid scheme. This is just a fucking grift,
like the mob.
It is. It's exactly the mob. Shake them down. Give them everybody that you can, every penny you can. But in 1993, it paid off. Not only was the church given tax exempt status, but the tax debt was totally forgiven. So $1 billion disappears.
You know what? The fucking student debt isn't that high. Just press delete on that motherfucker, man. What are you doing?
No, I agree.
You can just make the numbers.
State of California sends you a letter that says court-ordered debt collection if you owe them $14.
Court-ordered debt collection. I'm in debt to a lot of people. I've never got that letter.
If you owe the state of California, I think it's just like a form letter they send. But I thought it was funny.
That is insane.
Like because I was, I do some of my work is contract work, so I have to pay like quarterly payments.
Quarterly payments.
Yep. And so like they were like court ordered debt collection. I was like shit, and then it was $14, and I was like, I was like, it probably cost you more money to process this than the $14 that I'm about to send you.
That's a big $14 check. Fuck you.
But it's just amazing that you'd think that the federal government would have been like, actually, we're going to need some of that billion.
Right. That's a ton of money. It's money.
We got poor countries to bomb, Mr. Miscavige. Excuse me.
Sorry. Right. We need you to fund this. So it works, right? They are now granted tax exempt status, and Miscavige blows this up. It's more than just a clerical, issue. It is the United States government has recognized the legitimacy of the Church of Scientology. It's like
they had just won the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Exactly.
We watched it on stream again. It was one because we've been through all this stuff, and like the celebration that they had over this was substantial. It was.
Oh yeah.
It was just the biggest room full of white people you've ever seen in your life, dancing and people clapping at the wrong time and shit. And it was a party. There was raisins in the potato salad. It was
like, so he announces this in front of 10,000 Scientologists in this arena. And there's like this giant graphic that keeps going, the war is over. Yeah. The war is over.
Oh, it was very, very much like, not like 1984, but more like that movie Brazil, right?
Yeah.
It was like
it was a Terry Gilliam production for sure. And it was, the applause when he announced it lasted 10 minutes, 10 solid minutes.
Holy
or
shit.
else.
Yeah, or else.
If they caught you not clapping.
Keep that camera moving around. If I see one of these motherfuckers not on their feet, they're out of here. So we'll kind of go through this other part. The other thing about LRH is that he was all about celebrity. He believed in the power of celebrity, right? How do you spread the word for your church other than getting a celebrity involved that can help promote it with you, right? It's really savvy. I think he's like one of the early people that understood what influencer culture was, for sure.
I mean, not for nothing. The only reason anybody really joined his cult was because he was a minor celebrity himself. He had written like Pulp Fiction novels. Like, we kind of look at the stuff and think that it was kind of silly, but at the time that was, entertainment for just a lot of people were into that. And even if L. Ron Hubbard wasn't the most popular or whatever, the fact that he was being published regularly or whatever, he was certainly like, I don't know, like the B list or the C list of like worldwide celebrities. And that, that certainly didn't hurt his ability to recruit.
Did not hurt. And he ran in circles with a lot of other like celebrity authors. I mean, he had a lot of friends that were big deals. He's like the Nicholas Sparks of his time.
Dave, I got to applaud you for that Pulp Fiction pun. Ever going to the celebrity route? Because that was perfect.
Oh, because of Travolta.
Yeah. When I heard that, I was
the whole thing. I mean, it all makes sense. It all comes. I didn't even know I was doing that. It just, you should just applaud the world for everything coming together that way. Cause that's the kind of novels he was writing. It was
Pulp Fiction.
That was what it was called. So awesome. you can applaud the world, or maybe Tarantino for thinking it'd be funny to book Travolta in that movie.
Yeah, Tarantino,
like to remake Travolta's career.
Well, knock one of the problematic N-words that you said off the list for this one good pun that you made. There we go.
Oh, with Travolta? I mean, for Tarantino.
Yeah, for Tarantino. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. So LRH's pitch to celebrities was basically this, and this is a quote from him. He said, "A civilization without insanity, without criminals, and without war, where the able can prosper and honest beings can have rights, and where man is free to rise to greater heights, are the aims of Scientology." It's a little ableist, I think, looking back at it now, but maybe I'm seeing too much into it. But that was it, and that attracted people, including John Travolta, who used that quote several times in interviews to kind of justify his place in Scientology. Of course, he's not the only celebrity in the church.
No, he is not.
He was the original Golden Boy, and there's a bunch of other minor celebrities involved. But by the time the Miscavige seized power, Travolta was washed up. He was doing the Look Who's Talking movies, which were not amazing.
It's like that scene from Toy Story whenever Andy gets Buzz Lightyear and he's holding Woody in his hand. It's like, I don't want to play with you anymore. And then he just drops him.
I'll still take the Look Who's Talking residual check, though. I mean,
probably.
I'm doing just fine off that.
Is that on streaming anywhere? I don't think I've ever seen that on any of the streaming services.
I mean, maybe the residuals check is like $18 a year and I'm wrong. Who knows?
So Miscavige needed a new face. And fortunately, the new face was recruited into Scientology in 1986 by his then wife, Mimi Rogers. And his name was
Tom Cruise.
Damn right. Cruise and Miscavige became friends during the filming of Days of Thunders, which was basically Top Gun with race cars. And it's also about this time when Miscavige, I keep switching back and forth in the pronunciation. I apologize, but that's just what you're going to get on this. This is my low effort pronunciations. This is about the time when Miscavige allegedly plotted Cruise's divorce from Mimi Rogers and his eventual marriage to Days of Thunder co-star Nicole Kidman.
Really? Dave Miscavige directed all of this?
Apparently, yeah. Allegedly. And it's weird because it's like Mimi Rogers got Tom Cruise into the church.
That's
but now
crazy.
Once he was
little
there,
imp of a man puppet master your life.
That's the thing. I mean, this is like Nicole Kidman's breakthrough role. Like,
Nicole Kidman. I think Miscavige, if this is true, thought he was catching Nicole Kidman on the upswing, right? If he was going to get her into the cult by getting her to hook up with Tom Cruise or whatever, he was going to get her on the upswing so that somehow he could probably take credit for her success as she gets even more successful after Days of Thunder or whatever.
Scientology power couple,
right?
The problem with that is that Nicole Kidman's father was a psychiatrist, and that was a very big issue with Scientology and led to a lot of strife.
As you should.
I could make this a whole episode about like Tom Cruise and all the weird shit with Scientology and Tom Cruise, but that's not this podcast. So
you should. I'll come back for that.
Yeah, we could do that. We absolutely will do that.
Maybe we'll do something where me and HK are hosting the two of you.
Hell yeah.
I'm down.
We talk a little bit about Tom Cruise or something.
Absolutely, because there's a lot of shit there. There's a lot of women.
Out of my daughter's playroom for that one.
Oh yeah, we do. Ours is video, so you'll have to put like a sheet behind you or something. I don't know. I don't care what you do. Actually,
so there's a bunch of other. I am actually just waiting for Scientology to start an NFT, to be honest. But until then,
Could you imagine the Xenu NFT?
Oh my god!
I mean, we should put out the Xenu NFT.
Maybe we should. Maybe we should beat them to market on that.
I mean, if somebody's going to steal somebody's money with a Xenu NFT, it might as well be me.
That's true. So, there'd been a bunch of hiccups, right? We've talked about a few of them, like things that they've run into. The church continued to grow and exploit its followers, but the internet was really about to change all of that. And the internet fucking ruined Scientology. And even if the church won't admit it, like they absolutely won't talk about it. The church forbids its members from using the internet to look up things that are negative about Scientology, but inevitably people found the negative stories and I'm going to use this in quotes, they did their own research. And
so not for nothing. Some people have reported that if you were a Scientologist, possibly even unbeknownst to you, they would install spyware on your computer to see what you were looking at.
Crazy shit.
They would do something called they would do sec checks. It's security checks. And if they knew you were looking at stuff on the internet that was critical of Scientology, they would just sec check you. And that just means weird space alien cult interrogation. That's what sec check is. Security check. And they would just hammer you until you admitted to it. And then they would punish you for having looked up or come across, even by accident, negative things about Scientology. Now, these are just like the reports of former members, and we have to take some of the things said by some of the former members with a grain of salt,
right? Because
they might have incentives to lie or sensationalize what's going on, maybe for their own financial gain in some cases. Certain celebrities had television shows where I thought they had certain people on who were maybe less than credible, telling some of these kinds of stories. And but I believe that they had done this to some people, where they had installed spyware or maybe some kind of weird filter, like when you go to the library computers or whatever.
Now, when you mentioned punishments, what kind of punishments were they dealing out?
You would have to do work sometimes. If you were well-to-do, maybe the punishment was the functional equivalent of a fine, where you weren't necessarily told that it was a fine, but you were like, you might be told, hey, donation could make this go away.
Gotcha.
But,
extortion.
But if you were like what they call a public Scientologist, which is somebody who he lives out in public, doesn't work at the Sea Org, doesn't spend a lot of their time at the church. A lot of times that just meant that you would work extra hours. And sometimes your work detail would change to things that were designed to humiliate. Not like they wouldn't just be like, oh, clean the bathroom. Because you know what? Cleaning the bathroom is a thing that people should do, actually. They would be like, clean the bathroom with this toothbrush.
Right.
And only this toothbrush. And, you know, again, these are from the reports of people inside the cult. And some of those people have even if they don't have an incentive to embellish, they may embellish it just because it was fucking traumatic. And to them, it was the end of the fucking world. So, yeah, but this stuff right here, they kind of knew as soon as the internet started having negative information about Scientology at the tip of your fingers, they were hip to what like the threat real quickly. But I think as we're going to see in this document, they weren't really hip to how to deal with it.
No, no, not at all. No, I mean, you know, and the other side of that is I also feel like there's been enough people who have left, you know, including pretty much all of David Miscavige's family is out, you know, and they've been some of the ones that are ringing the bell. And I do think there's a lot of people that have an axe to grind, but I also feel like if you hear the same thing, yeah, right. Why wouldn't they? But I also feel like you got a lot of people saying pretty similar things. It lends some credence to what they're saying. Like, I don't believe either side is telling 100% the truth. And I don't believe that with anything. Like, we do a show about fucking grifters. All these people are liars, right? Like, all of them are, or all of them believe their version of the truth is a much more polite way to say it. But I just think that, yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's truth to, I would say, a lot of it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that there's definitely the most of it is probably mostly accurate.
Because of kind of who we are, we like to cover, when we get into these communities and start like kind of drilling down on what's going on, we end up covering the personalities. And we've definitely found a few people who are ex-Scientologists who are either attempting to be on that grift or who are on that grift.
Right. They've made it their
funniest
brand. Ones
are the ones who are attempting and failing, because that's just really funny to watch. It's like you can't even grift on this.Maybe you were never in the cult, but yeah, it's hard to tell. And at the beginning, I think we kind of got a little too familiar with some of the characters in the ex-Scientology movement. We had to take a bit of a step back because we were going, oh, should we talk about this? We're criticizing someone who's been nice to us. And then we were like, wait a minute, this is absolutely unacceptable for us to even be asking this question. Right. Yes, of course we have to talk about this.
Right.
But just real quick, the sort of online campaign against Scientology, while it was good at the time, it sort of laid the groundwork for a lot of things I think are pretty nasty today, particularly QAnon. I think that the anti-Scientology campaign that came off of 4chan called Project Chinology, with the people that were calling themselves anonymous, they all called themselves anons. It's just stylistically and in some ways functionally very similar to the QAnon movement. And I don't think it's like the fault of the people who were involved in the anti-Scientology movement at the time. I just think that they like tapped into a new form of online, they were calling it slacktivism at the time, which was actually kind of cute because it was pretty accurate.
Great name.
But they tapped into like a way in which you can use the internet, and social media was just starting to come up in 2008, 2009 when all this happened with Anonymous. They did tap into a way to like kind of use virality and like messaging about your opponents, messaging that's either funny or inflammatory to get people on your side, even if they don't really know what you're talking about. And again, if that's aimed at Scientology, that's all well and good, but other people saw that and were able to pick up those tactics. And I think on the balance, it's been a bit of a problem, actually.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
I would 100% agree. Absolutely. Yeah. So Let me see where.
I was about to say Austin Place.
Yeah, no, I mean, like Dave landed it. I mean, it was like that's you stuck the landing. That was it. That was a really good point.
People are like, people come onto my channel at like 1 a.m. They're like, that guy's a drunk idiot. and no, that's not true. At 1 a.m, I'm drunk, but I'm not an idiot. So yeah, I mean, I think about this stuff a lot, like how like what was good about movements, what was bad about movements.
Right.
A good thing that came out of that is a lot of what happened at Occupy Wall Street was also using similar tactics to the Project Chinology. In fact, it was a lot of the same people. Right. People want to say it was Adbusters that did it, but I think Anonymous, if I was following it correctly, the loosely affiliated group of internet people known as Anonymous did more to boost Occupy Wall Street than any. Adbusters is like a kind of like a charity or whatever, that like anti-capitalist or whatever. And maybe I'm mischaracterizing Adbusters because they don't really exist anymore. They don't exist to the like they're not part of a conversation anymore.
Right.
And so it's just that the tactics cut both ways, and you got to be willing to accept that some of the tactics that your movement might use are going to be used against you.
Oh, absolutely.
Where the hell is faith and good intentions?
Yeah. Well, and it's just like all this stuff is more connected than people think, right? Like you learn from the people that had attempted things previously, and you take what they you learn from what they did, and you move on, and you evolve your strategies and your tactics, and you keep going. Absolutely. But the internet was a powerful tool, good ways, bad ways, everything. And so far as Scientology, I mean, it woke a lot of people up, and they were like, hey, listen, like we're in the Sea Org, we're a member of the Sea Org, and we're working 80 to 100 hours a week, and we're not making, and they're getting paid about $50 a week. I have all the reports. I've not seen anybody say that they made more than $50 a week.
I have for documents.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we talked about this in episode 32 of our show, which is JPay. This is prison labor. Like this is what
slave labor.
It's slave
100%.
labor. It's what prisoners get paid. It's when you start seeing that from the outside, it becomes very apparent that you're part of an organization that just exploits people. It's they do not
give a fuck about them.
Nope, absolutely not.
And the Tom Cruises and the Nancy Cartwrights and Shaka Khan. By the way, that was the most disappointing one.
Shaka Khan's a Scientologist?
Yeah, Shaka Khan, really?
Dave.
Oh, dude.
I knew Bart Simpson was, but I didn't know Shaka Khan was.
That was the most disappointing for me. Chick Corea also was. It was disappointing to find out as a Scientologist.
Oh man,
but not as much as Shaka Khan. Like gay people in our 40s, we love us some Shaka Khan. Yeah. So,
as a gay person in his 40s, you're 100% right.
We love us some fucking Shaka Khan.
Juliette Lewis was a little disappointing for me because I always enjoyed her as an actress, but
I'm also surprised she never got out. That's pretty. I would have assumed she would have been one that would have got out.
She never did. She also hasn't been in anything in a long time. Her time.
When COVID hit, I know I've seen pictures of the living conditions inside of some of the Sea Org facilities, and I was like, those people are all going to get COVID. And
100%.
They either didn't, or it happened and Scientology covered it up, or it happened and the media slept on it and wasn't covering it. But we were a woman named Karen De La Carriere, who I've been kind of friendly with. She used to be like she was the wife of like the president of something such and such in Scientology.
Yeah, one org.
Fucking weird ranks. But she was sending me pictures of like the living conditions from people who had leaked them fairly recently. And people were like putting up fucking saran wrap and shit around their fucking bunk bed to try to protect themselves from COVID. God. And it's so horrible. Like, I wonder what happened. I wonder if it like ran through there, and because most of the people that work there are young and it just didn't kill a bunch of people.
I was about to say, like, these are like, for all intents and purposes, children in the Sea Org, right?
No, it's mostly young adults.
Okay.
There are children in the Sea Org, but I would say it's mostly college age people. At least the ones that are living like in the dorm. Oh, this is such a weird way to talk about it. such a like, it's almost like Orwellian, even in the way that we're talking about it right now, where we're like using doublespeak to talk about like a prison.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the same set of concerns I had about people in prison, actually, when COVID hit. And the prisons probably covered it up too. So why the fuck wouldn't Scientology?
Right. Oh, absolutely. The prisons, North Korea, and Scientology covered all that shit up. So I want to pivot a little bit. We're gonna kind of wind things down here, but as people have left, and Dave talked about this quite a bit, but there's been a ton of stories that have emerged about David Miscavige, all 5'3". He says he's 5'5", and we'll see. No short shaming here.
Who's that jumping out the sky, David Miscavige? I can't connect it.
So that a lot of claims have been made about how he is physically violent towards other members of the church and leadership, and that he is assaulted people. He has a very short temper. He will run across desks and grab people and punch people and show. There's a whole thing, but it's definitely led to investigations into the church for human trafficking, physical abuse, and child labor charges. Now, there haven't been any, as far as I know, charges pressed against the church. Like many things, the people come in and investigate. They're like, nothing to see here, and they're like, okay, we'll see you later, and run away. That's one of the only place
the only place that's done anything about them, unfortunately, is the Russian Federation, and that's a problem too, because in the Russian Federation, there's a little bit of a lack of transparency and a little bit of lack of separation between the state and the Russian Orthodox Church.
Right.
So they're more than likely being persecuted not for their human rights abuses, but for not being the Russian Orthodox Church and operating inside of the Russian Federation, which I keep having to remind the people in the anti-Scientology spaces that I'm in that that's actually bad.
Right. Right.
It doesn't matter. In fact, I'm taking the Church of Scientology's side in that particular.
Religious persecution is bad, guys.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So the most disturbing story, and Dalton, you alluded to it earlier.
Where is your wife, David? We need to find her.
It is about Shelley Miscavige, and I would not be doing justice to the story without bringing this up. In 2007, she disappears. She
literally
disappears. Nobody sees her again. She was David's assistant and appeared at all of the public functions with him up until that point, and then nothing. She's gone. And there is Leah Remini, who we talked about, has made Shelley's disappearance her cause célèbre. But
she's made it about herself anyway. Now
she has, and that was the sort of the cloak that she put over. And I'm not a big Leah Remini fan. I don't really.
I think the first season of that show was great, and then the rest of it was about Leah crying.
No, I didn't watch much after that, to be honest. And I'm glad now that I didn't. Yeah, so
check it. Do your own research.
So she's alerted the LAPD. They apparently questioned people in the church and came away and said, no, we think she's fine. We think Shelley is fine. It's okay. Everything's fine.
Trustworthy organization, the LAPD.
Yeah, very much so. No weird history at all. But I just want to really quickly read a piece from the New York Times, which, I have lots of feelings about. But
they mentioned my dude, Tony Ortega. There's like two people in the anti-Scientology movement that have their heads on straight: Mark Bunker and Tony Ortega.
Yeah, I do. I dig Tony Ortega. I think he's got.
If you get a chance, anybody who's listening, we interviewed him for our show, and you can find that on the feed for the Plex podcast, because we don't have a podcast feed for the Scientology one. Just go to our website, echoplexmedia.com, and punch in Tony Ortega and get our interview with him. He's great.
That's awesome.
He stayed up late for us too. He's on the East Coast. And he came on at midnight. He was great. And at the very end, he was like, "Hey, some of the Scientology people are into QAnon. Got to go. Bye." And he left us with the thing that we would have wanted to talk about. He didn't really in that.
No, come back.
That was the end of the interview. He just said, "Oh, by the way, this," and then we said our goodbyes. It was like,
oh God.
That shows that he kind of looked. He took a little time to look at who we were before we talked to him, right? Because otherwise, he wouldn't have known that would have been just a great way to mess with us.
But it also is like, it's not that surprising, right? I mean, considering like early Scientologists were like New Age, alternate medicine, alternate, they were into crystals and healing. And I mean, you can cast that net on them. Those were the people that were attracted to Scientology. Those are also the people that are attracted to QAnon in a lot of ways. And so that shouldn't be all that surprising.
Yeah. And, Scientology is based on a conspiracy theory that the Earth is a prison planet, essentially.
Right.
And so like they invented to some extent the idea of like conspirituality.
Which Dalton is smiling because Prison Planet ties back to Alex Jones.
That's Paul Watson.
Joseph Watson.
Oh God, that guy.
Most boring man on the planet.
Imagine my shock. The best one though was when he said that like if he lived in a place with earthquakes or something, he'd be really afraid because he never leaves his apartment. But it wasn't like during COVID or anything. And I was like, oh shit, that guy just doesn't have any friends.
No, he's just a hermit.
No, he's a shitty little man.
Oh, what a waste of a fabulous mop of hair too.
And a great accent. I dig the accent. Even if he's kind of boring to listen to, it's still a good accent. You could definitely make that interesting. New York Times piece. So the question, where's Shelley, has never been answered by Scientology or the LAPD, but former members of the church have an almost unanimous answer. Shelley Miscavige is at the Church of Spiritual Technology, which is CST. As explained on journalist Tony Ortega's website, CST is the branch of Scientology so secret that few within the church even know about it. CST owns the copyrights to Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard's writing, both Scientology texts and the hundreds of science fiction stories he wrote prior to starting a religion. CST's job is to make sure that Hubbard's work is preserved for people to read in the future. This is particularly intensive because CST is anticipating a nuclear holocaust. To protect the writing from nuclear fallout, they are kept in underground storage bunkers. Hubbard's work is engraved on steel plates and gold compact discs and sealed in titanium cases. CST's headquarters, sometimes called Twin Peaks, are located near Lake Arrowhead, California. Few Scientologists know about the compound, and fewer have been allowed to visit. It is believed that Shelley Miscavige is being held at this mysterious area. As seen in photographs of the Twin Peaks compound exterior published by Insider, there are spiked fences, the same brand used on the border between the U.S. and Mexico, all around it. The majority of the spikes point inward, as if they are designed to keep people in rather than out. Security cameras record everything that happens at the perimeter.
We're going to go there.
Fiction nerds, Twin Peaks, come on.
We're going to go there.
All right.
Yeah, I think me and my co-host, the Media Wench, are going to go out there when the weather cools off a little bit, because we've been thinking about doing some kind of Scientology road trip. And Clearwater's a little far from the Bay Area, but Lake Arrowhead is beautiful, and we can do a little Scientology road tripping while we're up there. So,
fuck yeah,
yeah. That's like the consensus among like the rational people too, not like the speculators. The speculators, I would just say she's at this place called Gold Base because it sounds like imposing or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, the rational people the people I think are more rational and more trustworthy in the anti-Scientology community all think she's at this place near Lake Arrowhead.
And it's also important to note, and I meant to bring this up earlier, but I didn't, that all of everything that LRH ever wrote is now considered a religious text.
Yeah.
So they're all tax exempt.
Even though he was fairly open in the beginning, right? About Dianetics being a science fiction book, right?
Oh, I mean, all he ever wrote was science fiction.
Yeah,
but
Dianetics was his pivot to the modern science of the mind.
Gotcha.
But before that, all he wrote was the sci-fi books, and now they're considered religious texts and aren't taxed when they're sold.
So there's this show they do. It's called Inside Scientology. It's on their 24-hour network, and they have this whole thing about how you remember laser discs?
Yeah.
They have these giant gold discs that
Like
look like
big
laser
CDs.
discs that they're like archiving L. Ron Hubbard's like spoken word onto, and they're like archiving his important Scientology work onto these like fucking stainless steel plates that they're etching all the words into and then putting in these I guess, nuclear bomb-proof containers and then putting them inside a mountain.
It's fucking wild.
For the upcoming nuclear holocaust.
I'm not kidding. You can go.
No.
You can probably go find it on their website. It's like their archival
They're proud of
system
it.
or whatever. Yeah, they're proud of the craziest things. But they also describe the technology they're using as if they invented it and didn't just go buy it, which is the best part. It's like all off the shelf. It's expensive stuff, but it's all like off the shelf components that you can buy for this kind of archival. Or, you know, maybe it's not used for archival, maybe it's used for art, because etching into metal is often like artistic. But
Right.
yeah, they're acting like they just pretend they invented it all, and it's amazing. You can't really go wrong if you got nothing to do. Just pop on the Scientology TV 24-hour stream. You'll either see very disturbing things about how mental health professionals are actually the ones who did the entire Holocaust, or you'll see weird things about you'll see weird things about them claiming they invented an entire boat that they actually just bought.
Yep.
Or some white savior shit where they go down to like South America or whatever and like tell like they're like, we have reduced drug use in Cuba, or well, they wouldn't go to Cuba, there's communists there. We reduced drug use in Colombia, and I'm like, no, you haven't.
No, you haven't. You haven't done
No,
anything.
you haven't.
I've got to watch this.
Yeah,
The crapshoot between Holocaust denial and weird boat invention really captivates me.
It's something.
Yeah, they're on YouTube. It's amazing that like that they haven't been kicked off of YouTube for like blatant Holocaust denial, and they're fucking but yeah, they're a 24-hour channel on YouTube. Sometimes we just watch it late at night on stream when there's nothing else to watch.
That sounds like so much fun.
So, Shelley, a couple of theories about why she disappeared. These are kind of the two most popular theories that I had come across. One was that when David was away, she went in and made a bunch of organizational changes to the Sea Org and kind of like messed up their org chart. And David was very unhappy about that. Another one that I heard was that David returned from a trip without her, without a wedding ring, and she immediately assumed that he was fucking around on her and lost her cool, and then she disappeared. I don't know what happened to her. I'm not a speculative podcast, and we're not like gonna try to guess what happened to her if she's alive. I think she is probably.
Come on, Austin, I want to know your theory.
I think she's alive. I think she married a shithead and who is a control freak, and that she had probably over the course of their marriage had a bunch of micro transgressions, or that's what he perceived. And he had to do something to get her out of the picture so he could do whatever he wanted. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's that's my thing too, is that she was the second most powerful person basically in the organization, and people genuinely liked her, and that was a threat to his like all consuming power. Also, not for nothing, I mean, you think the guy that's the head of an abusive cult isn't also going to be an abusive partner, right? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's you know, it is what it is. It's unfortunate. It is what it is. But
yeah.
And I think they Truman showed her. I think she's somewhere beautiful where she's kind of getting everything she wanted. I don't think she's like in some hole somewhere. I think it's the other way.
I like that. I think that, I definitely like that better than she's in a basement somewhere.
I think that they would certainly Truman show her.
Well, yeah, no, that makes the most sense.
Real quick, can somebody explain what Truman Show means?
Oh, it's just that they would kind of give her everything she needs, except minus the Truman Show was a movie where this guy didn't know it, but he was the subject of a TV show. And so his life was completely constructed by TV producers or whatever. And so I think they did that to her, not for a TV show, obviously, but just to like, oh, we're going to put you in this beautiful place where you can work on this, or you can work on that, or
they orchestrate like her interactions.
Yeah. Everything around her is fake and staged.
This TV show sounds like a nightmare, but
you should watch the movie. It's good.
Okay. All right.
So just a couple things. We'll wrap it up. This last nasty little guy has been incredibly successful. In 2015, it was estimated
we already talked about Tom Cruise.
the nasty littler dude.
Slightly littler.
Very successful. And
it goes Ben Shapiro, Tom Cruise, David Miscavige in order of
pretty much. I want to see.
At least Tom Cruise and David Miscavige can get their wife's pussy wet. Okay. Ben Shapiro does not know.
Maybe Tom Cruise. Maybe Tom Cruise.
So as of 2015, Scientology was worth about $3 billion in assets. And most of it was in real estate, which David talked about earlier. And, you know, in order to remain tax exempt, you can't just hoard your money, right? You can't have this pile of money sitting in the bank. You actually are required to spend it to prove that you're doing good in your community. And so what Scientology's whole grift is investing in real estate all around the world.
It's McDonald's.
Yeah, but with the church.
They're in the real estate game.
It's the real estate game. Everybody knows that. Vornado is a huge real estate company in New York City. They own the building that I work in. They also began as a fan manufacturer. And you'll know that like Vornado fans is a thing. And the history of that company is they started to buy real estate in retail stores for their fans, and then figured out that real estate's actually making them a lot more money,
more lucrative than the fans.
Yeah. And so they pivoted and they sold the Vornado fan line, and they kept the Vornado real estate. And they like one of the CEO is one of Trump's biggest donors. And I mean, in New York City, they're a massive fucking real estate, maybe the biggest commercial real estate company in New York City. So
what are they doing with this real estate that they're buying?
They're turning it into training centers. You know, you can go and get audited. You can stay if you're a Scientologist from out of town. You got room and board there. But you know, early in the 2000s, things really started to fall apart. That's when you start to see a lot of the high profile departures from the church, and they're still hemorrhaging members. I mean, it's people are leaving the church, and so it's actually, to me,
are they just allowed to leave? Like, is it come as you go?
Oh no. They're tracked. They are cut off.
Well, to the extent that Scientology even has the resources to do that anymore. See, as their membership drops, it becomes easier for people to leave because there's less people in the cult who might be willing to track you down. And as all of their holdings become in real estate, they are less liquid as time goes on.
Gotcha.
So they have less money, and it becomes like, is it really worth it to send a PI to follow this person around?
Right.
And so they're not doing that the way they once were. I think that kind of peaked in like the same time, basically, as like Anonymous and the internet went after them. That was sort of when it peaked, or at least our ability to see it peaked. And then it either went away, or they're, you know, using electronic surveillance on people, maybe just stalking people on Facebook who leave, or, you know, you'd have no idea who's looking at your Facebook or your Twitter or your Instagram to see what you're up to. So they may have switched to that mode, or they may just not care that they might, not that they don't care that people are leaving, but it may not be a priority for them anymore, because anybody up near the top of that thing knows that it's all real estate.
Yeah, it's all real estate. And I mean, the membership, we don't have any hard figures because they're not releasing their membership. But most of the estimates that I read said they went from in the 90s from about 100,000 members to today about 20,000 members, which is a significant decline.
Holy shit. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. And they still have some big fish. You know, they've still got some big donors in there to kind of keep them up. There's a cat who's been running around the room.
Yeah, that's this one's Leah.
Hi, kitty. Psst, 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 psst. Tell your kitty I said psst, psst.
Hey, Dave said psst, psst, psst.
Thank you.
So I mean, I guess the positive note coming out of this is that they are, you know, losing membership like crazy, even if they're still taking advantage of people, mostly abroad. I'd say internationally is where they're doing most of their recruiting. It's definitely not in the States anymore.
They have a whole show about that called Voices for Humanity, where they go do some white savior shit.
Yep. That is not surprising at all. When you run out of white folks to treat, let's go move down the person of color
mission
ladder.
Trips, baby.
Yes, it is. It's very much that. So that's David Miscavige. That's what I've got. I don't know, Dave, you have anything else you want to share?
Not really. You. I thought I was gonna go through. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go through here and fill in some of the gaps. No, you didn't miss much, my dude. You did not miss much.
I appreciate that.
And like a lot of the, you know, there's, you know, when you were talking about him being abusive to other members of the church, a lot of times he would use sort of almost like his security staff, his personal security staff, and have them do some of the physical abuse. But also, if he was going to hit you, it wouldn't matter that, I'm kind of a big guy. If I was under his thumb in the organization or whatever, if he hit me, I wouldn't be able to hit him back, right? Because the rest of the people in the room, security staff, whatever, I'd get jumped. Yeah. And so, just the fact that he's little doesn't mean that he can't be physically abusive, and that you might actually want to pretend that he hurt you more than he did, which is what I imagine anybody under his thumb did. If he like punches somebody and they're kind of, maybe they grew up a little rough or whatever, and they're kind of able to take a punch. Maybe they pretend that it was like a powerful punch, right?
Knockout.
Right.
Yeah, that they got really hurt by it. And, like Marty Rathman, who used to be in there as cop to doing some pretty nasty stuff for the cult. But there's also rumors about him sort of having settled with them and his anyway, I don't even want to get into that because that's just a bunch of drama, bunch of goddamn drama. There's just, if you want to find it, you can find the Marty Rathman and the ex-Scientology people drama. It plays out in the Louis Theroux movie.
Yep.
But yeah, this was super fun. Glad you chose David Miscavige over L. Ron. Not only because more people have done L. Ron, I just think the story of David Miscavige is much more one of a grifter, where I think L. Ron just he drank his own Kool-Aid and shit.
Yeah,
I think he
totally
was more,
agree.
And I don't know the extent to which David Miscavige believes this stuff.
I don't think he does at all. Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't think he does at all. I think he sees it as a
his
means to an
behavior is such that it's much different than L. Ron Hubbard's behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I think I just think it's a means to an end for him. I think he craves power more than anything else. He wants to be the top of whatever organization he's at. I thought that the entire time I was doing the research, I was like, this guy doesn't believe any of this shit. He knows it. He can speak it better than anybody. He talks the talk, but I don't think he believes it.
And yeah, just some of his behavior would lead you to believe that he doesn't even care about the money so much as the authority.
Yep, the power for sure. For sure.
All right, well, Dave, we're going to roll out the red carpet for you. Any pluggables? Where can people find you at?
Okay, I'm producer Dave, or otherwise known as Gay Dave. And if you're local, check me out on Grindr. Otherwise, you can find me at echoplexmedia.com or twitch.tv/echoplex. And if you want to support our project, go to echoplexmedia.com/support. Unlike a lot of other podcasters, our income comes from a variety of places, mostly Twitch, but also there's merch at the support page on our website, Venmo, OnlyFans. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's not true. Yeah, you can just echoplexmedia.com. Everything's there. We have a couple great articles on our blog, which we've changed the name of to the Defamation Times. We have one of the people writing for us is a professor of sociology named Chris Connor, who also goes by Professor QAnon. And he's put a couple great articles on the site about conspiracism. And also he and Marcus, who goes by Homozygote on Twitch, a good Twitch friend of ours, did an article together on there, and they published it on our site before it went on, I believe, the Daily Beast. So I'm just thought I'd give those two guys a plug, because they don't have to publish on something called the Defamation Times, but they choose to. Yeah, and this has been a lot of fun. I was, I've never been on a show that's maybe structured like this. Most of the times when I've appeared on people's shows, it's been like interview format, where I'm like basically expected to be like some kind of misinformation or cult guru, and that's a little more I'd say nerve-wracking than this format, where I'm like, oh shit, I can just chime in with jokes and gags and knowledge when I have it.
That's it.
We're running a loose ship around here.
And I'm just going to say this, David. I really love the Intellectual Dollar Tree, the podcast, and you work on a lot of stuff, but that's the one I'm drawn to. You had a recent interview with Chris Kavanaugh from Decoding the Gurus, which I like Chris a lot, and me and him have clashed over a lot of things over a period of time, and which is okay. Yeah, that's fine. Actually, it's totally fine. It was a great conversation. I'm a big fan of Decoding the Gurus, so yeah, that was fun to listen to. My favorite thing about that show is at the beginning, Matt was like almost shy, and now Matt's throwing like more bombs than Chris is, and I think that's great. Unless you go to Twitter, and Chris also not for nothing, Matt's a bit of a smoke show. I mean, really. Yeah. Oh, for sure. 100%. I've always thought that.
I don't know. Maybe you should edit that part out. I don't know. Do they listen to your show?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, but this has been super fun. And I guess just shout outs to the people that work on my projects with me. You're familiar with HK. He's not been around as much lately. The jury duty. Yikes.
Oof.
Well, he's smart enough. He's like, I shouldn't be running my mouth on the internet while I'm on jury duty. I'm like, that's probably okay. But also the media wench, Ashley, my bestie, 25 years of friendship and 6 or 7 years of working on this project together. The councilman who works with me on the Down Ballot project, Chip DeVille, who works with me on Local Love, and all the other guest hosts. We've had just other kind of Twitch streamers on. Tomorrow night I do Conspiracy Bingo, and I'll have a Twitch streamer named Hildebeest on with me. And she's fabulous. She's like this retired Canadian lady who talks hella shit and drinks hella port wine, and I love her.
That's amazing.
So just, and shout out to the people in my community that like give money, support, share all this stuff. At first, when we were doing a podcast, we were like, you know what, we should build this fabulous audio system and everybody will just come to our show. And then that was untrue. You have to build a community around what you're doing, or you're just not doing shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. It's good content. I highly recommend. I'm a fan. So
Austin, plug our shirt.
No, why you make me do this? I'm terrible at plugging.
Because it's hilarious from what you try.
Dalton, just do it. I don't want to.
I make HK read out the intellectual Dollar Tree because he sucks at it. I don't know if you've ever heard that. I'm like, hey, you read out the show. He's like, I suck at that. I'm like, no.
Yeah, no, I make Dalton do all that. I do all the research. Dalton has to do all of it.
All right. So listen, we have announced this on Twitter. We have not announced on the podcast yet. We're currently doing pre-orders for a shirt. The deadline is August 1st. Every profit from the shirt is going to the National Network of Abortion Funds. It is a cool shirt with the Supreme Court on fire. We're going to do anarchism through shirts, so you don't have to. You can find that shirt at ifyoucatchmygrift.bigcartel.com. Go buy it. Deadline's August 1st. Expect shipment 4 to 6 weeks after deadline. And to wrap the show up, we have friends. Check out our friends at Pod Van Dam, my WTV guide. Super fantastic. At odds. X-Over. Yeah, I need to write this down. You can find us on Twitter at Catch My Grift Pod. You can find me on all socials at GriftBoyDalt. You can find Austin on Twitter at
Grift Daddy.
And you can find Dave on Twitter at
Mr. Emma. No, you're gonna have to find me. You can find all of our Twitter. You can actually find everybody in my organization's Twitter. You go to echoplexmedia.com. Click. There's a contact page, so you can find and bother all of us that way.
And I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, please do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Whatever.
Send them home happy.
Ladies and gentlemen, MB friends, stay beautiful.
Words from a book showed me the way to be free of the shadows of yesterday. But the price of that freedom we all must pay from now on. Ooh, joining together we held our ground, and we lifted our voices one mighty sound, and struck down the walls of darkness. We stood tall. Yes, we did. We decided to take a stand to defend the rights of man.